Hi equals, it's Kim. And before we get started today, I want to mention that May is Foster Care Awareness Month. And if you'd like to learn how to become an affirming foster care parent for LGBTQ youth, then check out the link below for NIAP, the National Youth Advocacy Program, and the resources they provide for you if you're interested in becoming a foster parent. But today I'm going to start a new series. It's called Language Matters. And today's episode is going to be about SOGI. What is SOGI? Well, SOGI is an acronym that stands for Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity, and Expression. And if you look at the first letters of each one of those words, it spells out SOGI, S-O-G-I-E. So, what is sexual orientation? Sexual orientation is something we all have. It's a characteristic that we all have. So, for example, some people are heterosexual, some people are homosexual, some people are bisexual, some people are asexual. It's just something you know inherently inside yourself. As you're growing up, you get around puberty and you just suddenly know that you're attracted to the same sex, you're attracted to the opposite sex, you're attracted to everybody, or you're not attracted to anyone. It's not something you decide. It's simply something that you eventually just know. So that's sexual orientation. Again, we all have one. And then there's gender identity, and we all have a gender identity. For a lot of us, the sex that we were assigned at birth, the sex or gender that we were assigned at birth, that M or F that is on our birth certificate, matches what our body says we are as well as what our brain says we are. And if that's true, then we're referred to as cisgender. If the gender or sex marker on our birth certificate doesn't match with our body or what our brain says we are, then we're transgender. And transgender is an umbrella term that covers a lot of folks. And we'll get into that in another episode. But so again, gender identity, everybody's got one. And gender expression, we're all doing it. It's a thing, right? It's a performance. It's how we perform our gender. So it's how we dress, it's how we speak, it's how we wear our hair, it's how we wear makeup and jewelry, all of those kinds of things about how we express masculinity, femininity, or some variation of both. So again, sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. Now, why is it important to know that? Well, in 1964, the federal government passed the Civil Rights Act. And what they did is said that it is illegal to discriminate based on the following characteristics: race, religion, national origin, and sex. And at the very last moment, they threw in sex, thinking that that would kill the bill, because who at the time they thought would want to vote to have men and women be equal? What happened then was that as time went on, there became this question: what does sex cover? But because it was thrown in at the last minute, there was never any conversation by legislators in committee or anything like this about what they meant by sex. So it's ultimately, at this point, been left up to courts to make that decision. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But anyway, the 1964 Civil Rights Act is referred to as Title VII. That's kind of how we refer to it. And in court, over time, Title VII has been interpreted by judges to include, for the most part, gender identity. So, courtroom, you are protected if you are transgender or cisgender, for that matter, from discrimination based on your gender identity. But that's in a courtroom. It's not actually spelled out in law. So in Ohio, the state law that's similar to that 1964 Civil Rights Act, and we call it the OCR 4112, says that you can't discriminate based on race and religion and national origin and sex, and includes some other things that have been added over time, including things like military status. There's a couple other laws that cover disability, the ADA. There's, marital status has been put in there, ancestry, age. These have all been added over time. But what's not there is sexual orientation and gender identity and expression. So folks that are LGBT have had to rely on those courts under Title VII, right, to get any relief from discrimination. So an LGBT person, if they are discriminated against based on their sexual orientation or their gender identity, does not have access to the Ohio Civil Rights Commission. The Ohio Civil Rights Commission is a place people would go if they've been discriminated against based on race and religion and so forth, to get their case mediated. And the OCRC, which it's known for short, would decide, does the case have merit? And then they would work with both parties to try to work the situation out. And if that didn't work, then they would send the case on into the court system. LGBT people can't access the OCRC because sexual orientation and gender identity and expression are not spelled out in state law. So we have to rely on the courts. Now, when we take a case to court, there's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of being out. And we talked about weighing that risk. And so a lot of people don't want to take a case into the courtroom, or they can't afford to take a case into the courtroom, or they just don't know how that would work. It's an iffy proposition because once you do get into the courtroom, it's a judge-by-judge situation. Sexual orientation has been very, very slow to be interpreted as covered by Title VII, much slower than gender identity. And it's just an iffy proposition. I am hoping that one day both the federal government and the state government add sexual orientation and gender identity and expression to that list, the one that is race and religion and national origin and sex, and hopefully it would say sexual orientation and gender identity and expression. That's what we hope. That list we call that enumeration, when they spell them all out. Language matters. If you'd like this video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in our next Language Matters episode. If you'd like to contact me, I can be reached at kimperfecttv@gmail.com. Bye, equals.